Sisi Radha Madhava ki jai. Let's go to Vrindavan. Krishna. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 hey. Sisi Radha Madhava ki jai. Sodhanandana Rajajanaranjana Sodhanandana Rajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Janamallabha Giribharadhari Gopi Janamallabha Giribharadhari Yashoda Nandana Rajajanaranjana Yashoda Nandana Rajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Radha Madhava Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Sila de Sankije, Go Premanandi. Go Premanandi, Hari Hari. Namo Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Prestaya Bhutale, Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine, Nirvisesa Sanyavari Paschachara Satani. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vashri Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Vanchakāpatarubhyascha kripasindubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vashri Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram So today, I thought we could continue our discussions about Srila Prabhupada, and we could title today's class Prabhupada Nectar. I think someone has to title this class. Maybe Nadia. After class, you can give it a title. Prabhupada Nectar. This would be part one. I don't know how many parts there will be. So there is this book. It's called Prabhupada Tributes. And this book came out, I'm not sure, maybe 8 years ago. And what it is that this is a book of all of Srila Prabhupada's, any Srila Prabhupada disciple who wants to write an offering in ISKCON, outside of ISKCON, in between ISKCON, anybody, sannyasi, fallen guru, avatar, man, woman, child, any Prabhupada disciple could write for this book. And so this book is amazing, and you can get it online. It's called Srila Prabhupada Tributes. I have a copy because I wrote for it, and everyone who writes for it gets a copy. So I read some things in here. I've read now, how much have I read? I've read 300 pages, and the book is about 650 pages. There's 300-400 disciples of Prabhupada wrote offerings. And I, occasionally I would read something and I would think, I want to make a note of that. And the way I made a note of it was by turning the page, destroying the book. I don't know if you can see, there's so much light here. It has to adjust. But I don't know if you could you see that page is turned up right here? So I turned up some pages because not all of them, but at a certain point, I turned up things I wanted to remember. And so I thought, since we haven't really churned the ocean of Prabhupada nectar as well as we could, or we would like, I would read and discuss some of the pages that I folded over. Now, you'll have to forgive me because I didn't note on the page what it was that I folded the page for, which means I have to kind of go down while you're sitting there looking at me going down so I can find, of course I could read the whole thing. So I could also talk while I'm reading, sort of. Okay. Hey, wait, why don't I just read the whole thing? That way, instead of me reading silently, you can hear what I'm reading, even if it wasn't the exact thing. I wanted to read. What I wanted to read will definitely come up. Then this is a Prabhupada at the airport. Let's see if there's a year here. This is probably very early on in ISKCON. Then Srila Prabhupada's flight was announced. He walked to his gate, turned around, and gravely looked directly at her. Who is her? Okay, we'll read a little further back. In one pastime, a devotee described how she was not extroverted and never a book distributor. Sounds like a lot of us. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Govinda, a little louder there, okay. But as she sat with Srila Prabhupada and the devotees at the airport, Srila Prabhupada said that the cruelest thing is to keep people in ignorance. And Prabhupada said this because he was inspiring devotees to distribute books. She questioned why she couldn't distribute some books for Srila Prabhupada, as she has given her life to Srila Prabhupada. She immediately picked up a nectar of devotion and stopped a young businessman. He stopped, but she didn't know what to say. You ever felt like that? And then one girl said, she said, you should take to Krishna consciousness. And the person said, why? She said, because you should. He might need more explanation, but sometimes we're like that. Her eyes flooded with tears, and he left. She just gave him a book. She started crying, and he was like, oh, okay. See you later. Then Srila Prabhupada's flight was announced. He walked to his gate, turned around, and gravely looked directly at her, put his palms together, bowed his head, turned and left. It had such an effect on her that Srila Prabhupada appreciated her and was pleased for the effort, not the result. Yeah, that's what I wanted to read. It's so important. So this is the comment by the devotee writing the offering. It was just so profound to read this. It is what is in the heart and mind of the devotee that counts. Such is the causeless kindness, encouragement, consistent prodding of Srila Prabhupada to purify our whole existence, not just externally, but internally, cultivating humility, sincerity, faith, perseverance, and devotion. So, as you know, this is a topic I've spoken about extensively. And about a week ago, we had a class, which I think is extremely important, about seeing ourselves from the point of view of Krishna, how Krishna sees us, not how we see ourselves, but how he sees us, because how he sees us is much different than how we see ourselves and how others see us. And Krishna, of course, is the most loving and compassionate. And so whenever I hear a story that underscores that idea that Krishna doesn't see us like we see ourselves, like, you go out to distribute a book and you give a book to someone, you start crying, you feel like, well, that was like major failure. I'm useless. I can't distribute these books. And Prabhupada gives you a little nod like, yeah, way to go. Good. I like that. You tried. Like he knows. Prabhupada knew what we were thinking. He knew what was in our heart. That was abundantly evident from hearing story after story after story where devotees said, I was thinking of this, and then Prabhupada answered that question, or I was thinking of doing this, and Prabhupada said, don't do that, but was never verbalized. So we understand that Prabhupada knows what's going on in our heart. So Prabhupada understood in this scenario what was going on in her heart, and he appreciated so much that she was willing to try, even though it was difficult. So, moral of the story, even it's difficult, even we're not so good at what we do, always know that Prabhupada knows you're trying, and that's the most important thing. Trying is always what's most important, right? And actually, sometimes, we're using the example of book distribution, sometimes the person who does the least number of books, or usually, is the one who tries the most because it's the hardest for them. The one, it's easy to distribute 100 Bhagavad Gitas. It's hard to distribute 2. Because if you distribute 100, it means you know what you're doing. If you distribute 2, it means you don't. Or it means you're like totally introverted and so forth. Have you ever had that experience, book distributor? You go out all day, you distribute like 3 books. It's the hardest day of your life. And you go out and distribute like 50, and it was like, that was easy. Everybody took, right? You were in the right consciousness, isn't it? I always say it's easier to succeed than fail. Failing is always the most difficult. Succeeding is easy because you know how to do it. So, and then the illusion is, then I think, well, I succeeded, so I pleased Prabhupada. Well, not necessarily. Maybe the person who failed tried harder than you, and Prabhupada is more pleased by their effort. Or maybe they had to overcome themselves to be able to do it. So there was much more to overcome. So Prabhupada's more pleased. So we can't just evaluate Prabhupada's pleasure by externals. Although Prabhupada did give indication he was pleased by numbers of devotees, numbers of books, numbers of temples. He wanted that, right? But that doesn't minimize the devotees who can't do as well as others, that he didn't appreciate them or appreciated them less. That's not true. Okay. So let's go to the next one, whatever that is, wherever it is. Here it is. Okay. So I'm just going to read the page until we come to the part that I wanted to read to you, since I don't know what part that was. And this is all pure nectar, unadulterated, pure nectar, untinged, straight from the horse's mouth. The horse in this case, that's an American saying, you're getting it straight from the person who was there, who saw it. It's not secondhand. Straight from the Prabhu's mouth. An Indian gentleman walked into his room and prostrated himself in front of Srila Prabhupada. He said, Swamiji, you will save me. And Prabhupada replied, I cannot save you. I can teach you how to save yourself, but you must do the work. So this is very, I don't want to say this in a negative way or condescending or critical way, because in a sense, it's good that Indians understand that by mercy of a sadhu, you're saved. But when that mentality, when they're not clear, then they think the sadhu will save me and I don't have to do anything. Like I go to the temple, if I do the puja and like that, then I can go home and like do whatever I want because I did the puja and all blessings will come. Something, isn't it? Like I invite a sadhu for dinner and I feed him and I get so much punya from that like now it's like, State Farm insurance, I can do any sin and I'm covered. I call them up and say, I did a sin. Oh, you're covered. You did puja today, right? Something like that. So the Guruji, I want your blessings. Okay, that's good. But Prabhupada's making the point that the blessing is actually in the instruction, not just in the, just, okay, I want your blessing. So, okay, the Guru goes like that. This means Ashubhat blessings. Okay, now I've got the blessing, everything's good. No, the real blessing is the instruction. So let's read what Prabhupada said. Swamiji, will you save me? And Prabhupada replied, I cannot save you. Wow, what a thing for a guru to say. I cannot save you. I can teach you how to save yourself, but you must do the work. Now, as you know, sometimes devotees have difficulty and sometimes devotees leave Krishna consciousness. So when someone left Krishna consciousness or someone wasn't doing well, in the beginning of the movement, Prabhupada was really, really concerned. Go out and find him, bring him back. It was like Prabhupada lost a son or a daughter. But it started happening so frequently that at least according to me, Prabhupada took on a different attitude, which was, what can I do? Like, you say, how do I get to the temple from here? And I say, well, you go this way, this way, this way. And then you get lost. Whose fault is it? I gave you the directions. I actually wrote the directions down in a piece of paper. And then I find out, Anuradha, she ended up in, in Miami instead of the Alachua temple. She'd been driving 6 hours, It's like, oh, really? Whose fault is that? And Anuradha says, I didn't realize you only live 5 minutes from the temple. Well, I gave you a map there. No, I didn't. I actually lost it. Or you ever like, where did I put my beads? You ever have that experience? I can't find my beads. Where did I put them? Your beads are like, forget you. You don't even care about me. I'm going to hide from you. You ever have that experience? Can't find your beads. It's not like you misplaced them. Your beads walked away from you. They're like, you don't care about me? Okay. See you later. So, it's something like that with Prabhupada's instructions. We just forget. So whose fault is that? So Prabhupada would say, often he would say when he heard a devotee's not following. He would say, what can I do? But I have a really interesting story. This is so funny. There was a temple president and he wasn't chanting his rounds. So they came to Prabhupada and they said, Prabhupada, he's not chanting his rounds. We should remove him. And Prabhupada said, how do you know he's not chanting his rounds? And the devotee said, because he told me. And Prabhupada said, he's a Brahmin. He's honest. He can stay as temple president. Isn't that funny? So I think, it's not only funny, but think of how many devotees do something wrong that we want to like hang them, and Prabhupada saying, well, at least he's honest. You see, Prabhupada always finds something good, right? So I thought that was so interesting. I may have been at that temple because I was at a temple. Prabhupada came and the temple president, I don't think he was coming to Mangal Arti or wasn't chanting his rounds or both. And they wanted to remove him, and Prabhupada really liked him. So this is really interesting also, that Krishna consciousness is personal. Like on paper, we had all the reasons to remove him, not coming to Mangal Arti, not chanting his rounds, like, okay, officially we should remove him and replace him. But this person basically built up that temple. It was really his temple. And Prabhupada really liked him and he liked what he did. And they actually ended up removing him because he wasn't following, and Prabhupada was really upset. He didn't want him removed. So that's interesting, Krishna consciousness is personal. And so anytime I am tempted to criticize a devotee, which of course, I'm a pure devotee, so I never do that. But in the event that it might somehow possibly for a moment enter my mind, I always think of the relationship this devotee might have with Prabhupada, or in some cases, I knew the relationship they had. If you're not a disciple directly, I wouldn't know. But this devotee I want to criticize, Bhakta Burfi, after Mangal Artik, what did he do? He went in the kitchen, he stole the burfi. And I'm going to temple president. You can't allow Bhakta Burfi to live in the temple anymore. Every morning he steals the burfi. And the temple president says, yeah, but he works like 12 hours a day. Let him steal the burfi. No, the burfi that's for everybody. So Prabhupada was, Prabhupada gave us lots of rules. And some devotees love rules, don't they? Like they live for rules. That's like their whole life is like, give me more rules, isn't it? As Hridayananda Maharaj said, for those kinds of devotees, there's never a rule they met that they didn't like. This is to give me more rules. So and sometimes we get in this rule consciousness. He stole the burfi. That burfi was meant for everybody. Kick him out of the temple. Hang him from the trees. Right? Send him back to his mother. But Prabhupada didn't always deal with disciples that way because stealing burfi wasn't the only thing he did. He actually worked 12 hours a day. He's kind of hungry, let him eat the burfi. What's your problem? We'll make an exception for Bhakta Burfi. He likes burfi. That's why we gave him the name, but he works all day. Yeah, but he falls asleep in class. Yeah, because he only sleeps 4.5 hours because, he's up cleaning the temple while you're all snoring in the brahmacharya ashram. So that human side is almost like sometimes we don't want to give that human side to Prabhupada, or like we don't want to give that human side to anyone. We just want, these are the rules and you follow them, otherwise you're out. So there is, of course, truth. There are rules we need to follow. But we see with Prabhupada that, you might say he could adjust the rules because he's the guru. But at least the examples there that we're dealing with human beings, we're not dealing with robots. We're not like just, reprogram this Prabhu, lock him up for a week. He stole the burfi. Right. And so the irony is that now you're chanting your japa And what are you thinking of? What Leela are you thinking of? You're thinking of Bhakta Burfi stealing the Burfi for your 16 rounds and why we should kick him out of the temple, right? Isn't it? Isn't that the irony of it? Yes? Have you ever done that? Like, I can't believe Bhakta Burfi stole the Burfi. We're allowing him to stay in the temple and he steals Burfi every morning. And instead of chanting Hare Krishna, you chant Bhakta Burfi stealing Burfi, right? For 2 hours, right? That's the irony of it. And that's why the Shastras are so strong about keeping your nose out of other people's business, unless he's stealing the Burfi. And if the devotees don't get Burfi, they're all going to die. Okay, if they're all going to die, if they don't get Burfi, yeah, then we should be concerned. But probably that's not going to happen. So, let the poor guy eat his Burfi. He's like, he used to be like a drug addict. He needs something. What's the problem? So that's why the Shastra is very strong about criticism, because criticism is a boomerang and it comes back, right? Unnecessary criticism. I get criticized when I say don't criticize, so I have to qualify it. Unnecessary criticism, not that you can't. Because when I say don't criticize, I don't mean going to temple president and saying Bhakta Burfi stole Burfi. That's not criticism, that's just a fact. But after you say Bhakta Burfi stole the Burfi, and you say, and also he falls asleep in class and he talks during japa, and he's always hanging out with the women, and it's like he sleeps too much. That's criticism. Bhakta Burfi stole the Burfi is not criticism. It's like, hey, I like Burfi too. Okay, I'll talk to him. That's not criticism, that's just a fact. So when I say criticism, I mean that kind of criticism which occupies your mind during japa and after, and in the evening when you sleep, and in the morning when you wake up, and it becomes your campaign for life, to like get rid of all the Bhakta Burfis from ISKCON. And you're going to leave ISKCON as long as there's one Bhakta Burfi left. And like that's just, we don't need that, and that destroys you. So that's what I mean. Now, you know what else Bhakta Burfi does? All the brahmacharis come to the temple every morning at 3:30, but Bhakta Burfi comes at 4:30. You know why? I know why. You want to know why? Because that's the only time you can watch pornography when nobody's there. Like, how do I know? Did you see it? No, I didn't see it, but I just know. I can just tell by looking at it. That's called blasphemy, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Bhaktisiddhanta. When you make up a story about someone that's not true, and there's no way to prove that it's true, that's called blasphemy. Did you know that? Have you ever read blasphemy on Facebook? Never, right? You never heard blasphemy, because Facebook, we know everything on Facebook is 100% true, right? Everybody knows that, right? Yeah. So blasphemy is, and of course, Facebook is like God. It's absolute. It's like the Bhagavad. People read Facebook like Bhagavad Gita. It says, right, I read it on Facebook. He's reading pornography. It's true. How do you know it's true? Because it's on Facebook. So that's called blasphemy. When you make up something about somebody. Well, I know. He must be that way. That obviously that's why he doesn't come with all the other brahmacharis, because he needs to be alone, so no one will see. Yeah. So that's blasphemy. So one time a devotee wasn't chanting he was chanting 8 rounds, and the devotees went to Prabhupada. He was a sannyasi and a leader, and said, Prabhupada, can you ask him to chant his round? And Prabhupada said, no, you ask him. He said, why, Prabhupada? And Prabhupada said, because if I ask him, he won't do it. That's Prabhupada. Prabhupada asking, and he won't do it. Can you imagine? Right? So what did Prabhupada do with that devotee? He engaged him. He didn't take away his sannyas. He knew. Right? We're dealing with people, individuals. Every situation is unique. Right? So that's important. So let's read it again, because we got sidetracked. You forgot what I read. Will you save me? Prabhupada replied, I cannot save you. I can teach you how to save yourself, but you must do the work. So the devotee who wrote this, in her comment, Kaushalya says, we have to be responsible. We've been given everything, and then we have to take it and use it. Obviously, right? Your guru can save you only with his instructions, but he can only save you. He can only throw you the rope, but you have to catch it, right? The guru throws you the rope and you say, pick up the rope and say, can you come down here and put my hands on the rope? No, it's not like that. You at least have to do that much. Okay. Oh, look at this one. Beautiful. Guru Kripa Prabhu once asked, I mentioned this in a class, I don't know if you heard this, once asked Srila Prabhupada what the most important verse in all the Shastra is. You quoted this shloka from the Svetasvatara Upanishad. Ladies and gentlemen, the most important shloka in all the Shastra is Yasya Deve Para Bhaktir Yata Devi Tata Guru, Tashaite Katita Hyarta Pakashante Mahatmanaha. And I'll read the translation. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. This is so beautiful because you can read all the Vedas. You could be a Vedic scholar. You could know everything and not know the Vedas. Isn't that amazing? And you could be illiterate like Gorka Shordas Babaji and you could know everything. Or that Brahmin who couldn't read, who was crying when he was reading Bhagavad Gita. He got it. He got it. Our Krishna serving Arjuna, he got it. You may never get that by reading Bhagavad Gita 100 times. You may get no emotion, nothing. Your heart may stay like a stone block forever. It's possible. So, yeah. So this theme comes up a lot, and it's very important. It's a principle that the guru is not just your guru, but Prabhupada, other gurus. Our acharyas, faith in their word opens up revelation. Isn't that interesting? Because you can't just read Shastra. The Shastra has to speak to you from also within your heart. It's not just external, but from within. There's realization. Krishna has to guide you. So when you hear from Guru, the Guru explains, but also when you serve Guru, then you get realization by which you can understand. Otherwise, it's kind of like, how should we say? It's like inactive ingredients. Like you put ingredients, but you need something. I don't know. Baking is a good example. Yeast. You need something to make the bread rise, right? So you have all the ingredients, but no yeast. So the bread's like what we call lead bread. It's as thick and hard as lead. We used to make that bread in the temple, lead bread. One piece of bread was equivalent to 12 chapatis. And that's why everyone fell asleep after eating one slice of lead bread. It was so dense. So the yeast is the active ingredient and it causes it to rise. So the service of Guru is the active ingredient, which causes the disciple to understand the Shastra. Okay, so now you know the most important verse. That is from the Svetasvatara Upanishad 623, if you want to note it. But that verse is quoted by Srila Prabhupada over and over and over and over and over again because it's the most important verse. And Tanya, did you put it there? Can you put it there? Tanya's going to put it in the chat in case you want to memorize it. If you don't memorize it, I will never talk to you again, just so you know how important it is to memorize it. Yasya Deve Para Bhaktir. One who has devotion to Deve, God. Yasya Deve Para Bhaktir. Yasya Deve Tata Guru. One who has the same devotion to God for Guru. Pakashante, the Vedas, Mahatmanaha, to that great soul, the Vedas are revealed. Tasarte, Katita, Yarta, Pakashante. The import, the artha, the import of the Vedas, Prakash, is manifested. Where is it manifested? In your heart. Hare Krishna. Krishna Karshani, we will get to your questions. Don't worry. Just now coming. Okay. In your purport to Srimad Bhagavatam 7.9.38, you write, the entire Krishna consciousness movement is based on the principles of the Sankirtan movement inaugurated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, one who tries to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the medium of the Sankirtan movement knows everything perfectly. He is Sumedha, a person who is with substantial intelligence. As I said, I don't know the point, but when I come to the point, I will let you know. I wondered exactly what you meant by this, and more specifically, how that works for us. In other words, Prabhupada's saying, he's saying here, through the medium of Sankirtan, you come to know everything perfectly. So like, what does that mean? So I wondered what you meant by this, and more specifically, how that works for me. I then remembered that momentous statement you made in a lecture in New Vrindavan on October 16th, 1976. Quote, we have learned from our Guru Maharaj that preaching is very, very important thing. And when one is actually an experienced preacher, then he is able to chant Hare Krishna without any offense. Before that, this so-called chanting of Hare Krishna mantra, you may practice without any offenses. In other words, you can practice to avoid offenses, but by preaching, you'll come to the point where you chant without offenses. Isn't that interesting? I'll read it again. When one is actually an experienced preacher, then he is able to chant Hare Krishna without any offense. So there's a connection between giving Krishna consciousness and chanting without offense. Not without a fence, without offense. Sound like, and all the devotees in Russia are going, how do you chant without offense? And they're having a big debate, all week, and they're arguing. He said you're supposed to chant without an offense. What does that mean? That actually happened in Prabhupada's time. He'd say something, and then we'd finally go, no, that was a misprint, or that was a mistranslation. We're ready to kill people over it. You ever seen that? Devotees trying to kill one another over a misunderstanding. I heard it from Mahatma Prabhu. He said, you can't chant without a fence. So you have to put up a fence because, well, why do you say that? Because the neighbors might see you chanting. And then if they see you, they'll pollute you. So you have to chant with a fence. You must chant with a fence up. And it's I've actually seen things like this, which may give you some insight into why I preach the way I do, because I've seen a few strange things in my life, not, should I say, have seen, I'm also seeing in real time, yes, as well. Okay, so when one is actually an experienced preacher, then he is able to chant the Hare Krishna mantra without any offense. Before that, this so-called chanting of Hare Krishna, you may practice without any, in other words, he's saying, if you want to upgrade your chanting, then I'll rephrase it. You have to upgrade your heart with compassion, because basically, if you're not preaching doesn't mean necessarily speaking. It can mean anything in which you're trying to do something to expand the Krishna consciousness movement. You're trying to do something for the welfare of devotees and others. So Prabhupada's saying, if you remain Kanishta, who doesn't preach, then basically your chanting it's not very mature. So just by giving Krishna consciousness, you elevate yourself to the Madhyam platform, and that like transforms your japa, just by, at least in one way. Because compassion, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that when we're compassionate, then we can chant. When I feel compassion, when will I feel compassion? Then I can chant the holy name. So there's a connection between compassion and chanting. Okay. This astonishes and astounds me, as I always thought that when I become an expert and experienced chanter, then I will be able to preach effectively. It's like giving it backwards, Of course, they work together. So far, I've never heard of anywhere else where you said or wrote anything like that. It hit and impressed me profoundly, more than what you say, usually, probably because it sparks so meaningfully and practically to me at present. With this one statement, you have clarified and deepened my understanding of your message. How do I become an experienced preacher? In my research, I have found many instructions about the proper mood and mentality required to bring ourselves and others to Krishna. Here is one. The highest development of Krishna consciousness understanding will be when you are able to give anyone the truth in such a manner that they will respond in a positive way. You can all say, wow. 1, 2, 3. Wow. Isn't that nice? Like some devotees, they will say, you can't compromise. And it doesn't matter if people like it or not. We're not here to please the public. I just have to give it as it is, which of course is true. We can't compromise. But Prabhupada's saying, actually, I'll read something else. There's another letter somewhere. Yeah, listen to this one. You have to deal tactfully in your preaching. Do not compromise the truth, but speak palatably so he does not reject it, but accepts it. That is preaching. So I have to give you bitter melon because it's good for you. I have to cook it in a way that you're actually going to eat it. And you're eating and you go, this is delicious. What is it? And I say, it's bitter melon, and you spit it out. You go, I hate bitter melon. No, you swallow it and I tell you it's bitter melon. And you're like, wow, I never would have swallowed that if you would have told me it was bitter melon. So you give someone the philosophy, and you give good friendship and good kirtan and good prasadam, and then they'll say something. I was an atheist. If I would have known what I know now, if you would have told me that on day one, I would have never come back like that. So, okay. So that takes care of that one. And here is the next one. We'll stop in about 10 minutes or so, and then we can go to questions. So this is from two devotees in Alachua, Gosta Bihari and his wife Mahavishnu Priya. Yes. You saw Krishna everywhere and Krishna's beauty in everything. In Hawaii in 1975, when you walked the grounds of the Honolulu temple. Oh, this is amazing. If you're sleeping or distracted, please pay attention. This is one of those I don't believe it stories. Now I have your attention, right? You like those I don't believe it stories? This is one of them. When you saw a strawberry guava tree, it's not strawberries, it's a pink guava. This is Hawaii, so it's a tropical area. You saw a strawberry guava tree known as waiwi in Hawaiian, growing alongside the driveway. That tree, for the first 4 years of its life, grew straight and tall. But after the temple became home to your disciples, the tree made a sharp turn, growing sideways instead of straight up. In other words, it was growing straight up, and then it started growing like this, and it was growing facing the temple. Listen to what Prabhupada said. Srila Prabhupada, you said, this tree is trying to go into the temple to see Lord Chaitanya and the Panchatattva. Hare Krishna. That's what I like about Prabhupada and the Krishna consciousness movement. I was like, what other religion's going to say something like that? Maybe some Hindu, I don't know, but what other religion's going to say, when you pick this flower and offer it to the deity, that whole tree is going to become a human being in their next life. Yeah, so many religions don't even believe in next life. They wouldn't say that. But these things are, like Prabhupada, seeing, a little bit differently than most people. Hare Krishna. So the tree is trying to get darshan of the Panchatattva. Those are the deities in Hawaii. What do you think of that? Actually, okay. I think I might have missed one. Hold on. I think we're okay. Okay. A lot of nectar in this book, huh? It's called Prabhupada Tributes, and you can get it online, I'm sure. Download it. If you get this book, there's one problem with it, is you're not going to get anything done. Like I read this book 2-3 hours in the morning, 2-3 hours, and I have so many things that I'm not getting done. It's like because I'm reading this. I'm actually in anxiety that I have things I need to get done and I should have done last week. I have 5 books. And I was reading a little from each book, and it, like a lot of mornings, it's just like the whole morning. When I should be doing some other things, I just read the books. Okay. Mm. 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 I think this is it. One day in your sitting room, a disciple declared that we are all your puppets. You smiled, and raising your hand in the air, like a puppeteer replied, yes. Listen to this. This is like, you're going to get depressed when you hear it, but sometimes it's my service to depress you in the hope that maybe you'll do something. One day in your sitting room, a disciple declared that we are all your puppets. You smiled, and raising your hand in the air like a puppeteer replied, yes, but I want you to go like this, and you are going like that. In other words, I want you to go like this, but you're going like that. So even Prabhupada with his own disciples, right? We think, you did whatever Prabhupada wanted, but it's not easy to surrender. Yes, but I want you to go like this, and you're going like that. It was such a subtle movement. It was almost imperceptible that the two movements were distinctly opposite of one another. It is only because of your unflinching faith in following your Guru Maharaj's instructions that you accomplished all that he wanted, despite that we were just learning how to follow in your footsteps. I mean, there were so many things Prabhupada wanted that we unfortunately didn't do. A lot of times he just had to accept it. This is what he wants. We're not always doing it. At the same time, he was always grateful for what we did. It was this kind of paradox. There was a story once. They're building the Vrindavan temple, and Prabhupada's saying, I need money to build this temple, but my disciples are spending the money on other projects. He wasn't getting enough money. So this one devotee said, I'll collect all the money. When Prabhupada said that, my disciples are not giving me the money, he went out and collected all the money to build the temple. Hare Krishna. Wasn't that nice? While we were all sitting around eating our pakoras, they were like working like 15 hours a day, collecting money. Listen to this. During the month of Kartik in 1972, you explained to us some of the glories of Vrindavan. Excuse me. You explained to us some of the glories of Vrindavan this doesn't make sense. You explained to some of us and to this devotee, to Hari Griva and others, as we sat in your room at the Radha Damodar Mandir. As soon as he arrived, you're talking about Hari Griva, as soon as he arrived in your sitting room, with a beaming smile, you asked, so how are you finding Vrindavan? Hari Griva replied, I never thought such a place could exist. Just passing the bazaar was an experience in Krishna consciousness, because they're all Jai Radhe, Radhe, Jai Radhe. Still beaming effulgently, you replied, remember, on 26 Second Avenue, I was telling you and Kirtan Ananda and others about this Vrindavan atmosphere, how I was always longing for it there in New York. And later you declared, now I have hundreds of temples to go to, but I still like it best here of all. So Prabhupada, you might know, I don't know if you're aware, but when Prabhupada first came to New York, he was missing Vrindavan. I mean, we go to Vrindavan, we miss it, but Prabhupada was living there. He was a Brajbasi. He became Brajbasi. He was missing it. And he was missing it so much, sometimes he would go to the dock just to check the schedule, but he was not going to go back. It was kind of like to pacify him that there was a boat in case he needed to go. And he would say things like, you can't imagine how much bliss I was experiencing in Vrindavan. You just have no idea. And I'm missing my Vrindavan, but I have my duty. I'm staying here. So these were Prabhupada's words. I'm missing my Vrindavan so much, you cannot imagine how much bliss I was experiencing it. But this is my duty. Guru Maharaj he's given me this duty, so I'm doing it. It's nice, isn't it? Like, do you ever feel like you don't want to do your duty? Never. You never feel that way, right? Only me. I'm the only one. Yeah. So, but if you've ever felt like that, this statement of Prabhupada is very, like you're thinking, I want to go back to Mayapur, or I want to, go here or do this, and I can't go anywhere. Let's speak of Mayapur. I can't even go to like the next city. And even if I went to the next city, nobody's there. Everyone's in their homes. There's no festival or anything. So Prabhupada's feeling that also. I want to be in Vrindavan, but I hear I'm in New York, and this is my duty, to my Guru Maharaj. So it's nice to remember that, isn't it? Well, that's it. That got us up to page 309. That's all I saved, because maybe the first 100 pages I didn't save anything. And there's tons of nectar, for sure. I found another one. It's your lucky day. Are you ready? Oh, you are greatly fortunate. Bhaga. You're not Bhagavan, you're a Bhaga. Mahabhaga. You're greatly fortunate. Bhaga means many things. This is so interesting. I'll have to explain this. This is actually Rabindranath Swarup Prabhu's realization, but I just want to share it. The four regulative principles should be recognized as more than merely principles of morality. They are that but more importantly, they are also principles of knowledge of cognition. This is interesting. Put this in your memory bank. The four regular principles are principles of knowledge, And he explains why. When joined with the practices of Nam, Japa, and Kirtan, their observance endows the practitioners with pratyaksha, direct perception or realization, perception of themselves as everlasting individual spiritual entities who belong to and are part and parcel of the supreme entity whom all come and who all eternally dwell. We will see God and God's energies united together, perceiving that while nothing is different from Krishna, Krishna is different from everything. In other words, I just made a note of that. It's not a direct praise of Prabhupada, but I always found this so interesting. You know, you look at the four regular principles and you understand you have to follow them in order to chant without offense. But he's saying that actually by following them, then it allows the processes of bhakti to reveal in your heart knowledge. So they're principles of knowledge. Without following, you wouldn't get that enlightenment from within. So people say, why do you follow this? Because it allows us to be in a consciousness in which we can become enlightened. And when you don't follow these, it covers that. You have a potential enlightenment system within you, but you have to, have the conditions for it to work. So, and then there's, I don't know if it's in this, there was another thing I read, which was, so we've talked about this before, but there's another specific incident where Prabhupada said 16 rounds and 4 principles, and you go back to Godhead, and Prabhupada raised his finger and said, that is a fact, or like that. 16 rounds, 4 regular principles, you'll go back to Godhead. That is a fact. Wow. I mean, how many times has Prabhupada said that in different ways? And still we're like, really? I don't know. Godhead, I think I have another 16,000 lives before I become pure.
Gurudev, your keyboard is like, we can hear some music.
Might as well play something nice. Want some background effects? So Prabhupada said, yeah. So, 16 rounds, 4 regular.
I think there is some background music.
Yeah. Now?
Yeah. No.
I'll turn it off. Oh, it's nice to play some little sound effects. No, you're actually, I'll turn it off. Okay. It's become my extended desk here, yeah. So sometimes it's hard, okay, we understand that you can't just chant offensive rounds and kind of follow the 4 principles, like, you follow them with your body, but your mind is like engaged in all 4 sins. It's not, obviously not like that, but you're trying your best to chant without offense. You're following, fairly well, pretty much, in body, mind, and heart, the 4 regular principles. And Prabhupada saying, you're going to go back to Godhead. And he keeps saying that, and we keep saying, no way, it's not possible. How could it be? I'm so fallen. I'm so this. I'll never go back to God. You're like, how many times have I heard that? Like, I think I've heard that from every devotee in ISKCON, like at least 10 times. So that's why when Prabhupada is saying these things, he's saying, and that is a fact, and I promise you, and I guarantee, is because he knows we're like, no way, how can that be possible? I'm this and I'm that. Well, maybe we're underestimating the mercy of Mahaprabhu. And if you think about it, it's like, if you actually want to become qualified to go back to Godhead, then if I were you, I wouldn't try, because you'll never be. Isn't it? Like, you're actually going to become qualified, like to become a gopi, like, from a hippie to a gopi in 50 years. You're going to need some mercy, and we're going to get a lot of mercy in like the last week of our life, when we're, just like, when like the rocket ship's about to take off to go back to Godhead. And Prabhupada also said, you may forget Krishna, and he'll remember you if you've done all this service. So we have to I think I would suggest maybe we put more faith in the power of Mahaprabhu's mercy. I mean, like, he did come to take us back to God at, Krishna Mahaprabhu, and it's not like going to leave us all here. Yeah, you chanted 16 rounds, you followed 4 principles, but still, you're not going to make the grade. So we're all going to be sitting, Hare Krishna movement is going to be a huge failure. Nobody went back to Godhead. We just ate a lot of prasadam, got fat, and, jumped up and down and, took another body, it's going to take us, we'll have to come back in another Kali Yuga, maybe, take us another 8 billion years to, purify ourselves. Now the Hare Krishna movement's a failure if it doesn't work, right? So it's something to think about. And so Prabhupada made the promise. So, there's 2 ways to look at it. One way is just accept it. Like, okay, I can't figure this out. It's just like, that's mercy. The holy name will purify me somehow or other. Or this is the way Mahaprabhu is going to do it. And it's up to him. And we're going to have to worry about it. We just have to do it. And that's that. So I think that's important. Okay. I have another one. I read that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think I got everything. No, I got it. I don't know if I can have this class tomorrow. I have to read 300 pages before tomorrow. Get up early tomorrow morning. Okay, let's take some questions or comments. So, okay, from Krishna Karshani, I agree with your points that we should not criticize devotees and see good in them, but members of religion expect that those who are misbehaved will not be on the position of leader. Yeah, I think that's how you spell leader in German, right? I'm her English teacher, so I will correct her now. Leader is leader. Yeah. But maybe in German it's Lid, Leiter. We shall not be Leiter. You're no good. Yeah, okay. Yeah, no Leiter. We have a problem. Well, we don't have only one. When you come to the material world, you inherit many problems automatically. It's called the 3 modes of nature. They have inherent within the 3 modes of nature are unlimited combinations and permutations of problems. So we have this problem where we need leaders. We need leaders. Does anybody know German? Tanya, you know German? How do you say a leader in German? Is it like that? Leiter? Maybe that's how you say it in Polish. She's going to find out. We'll learn something today. If you learn nothing else today, you'll learn how to say leader in German. Well, we'll learn how it's spelled. I don't know if we'll pronounce it properly. Any of you out there speak German, please come on Zoom so we can hear you pronounce it. So here's I don't want to call it a problem. I'll call it more of a challenge, or maybe the politically correct word is we have a situation. Krishna Karshani, we have a situation. Right? Okay. Here's the situation. We need leaders. Not everyone's the best leader. And not everyone will become a good leader unless we put them in the position of leader. And naturally, they'll make some mistakes. So I have a story for you. I heard it yesterday. It was a beautiful story. Now, my experience, having been a leader and having not been a leader, is that leaders are the favorite targets of criticism. I mean, it's juicy to criticize other devotees, but it's like juicy with whipped cream and cherries on top to criticize the leaders because they mess up everybody's life. We know that, right? When you become a leader, you affect so many devotees, and people love throwing arrows at you. Now, having been on both sides of the coin, I'm very sympathetic towards leaders, and I generally don't criticize them, even when they're doing a bad job, because I know most of them are just trying, and they don't always know how to do everything well. We all make mistakes. We all say the wrong things. We're not omniscient. We don't know. We hurt people's feelings and we don't even, we just said, I want you to be happy. And like, how dare you say that to me? It's like, what did I say? I just want you to be happy. Yeah, but you don't understand that. That's offensive. I'm like, how is that offensive? Like, how am I supposed to know that? And that actually happened to me. Believe it or not, that actually happened to me. I said, we should all be happy. That's our service of Prabhupada. And some devotees got upset for me. I said, there's a context they were going through it. How was I supposed to know that context, that repeating what Prabhupada said would upset them? So that's what it means to be a leader. You will upset people, even unknowingly. And so here's my story. And not necessarily answering the question entirely, but this is an aspect of it. So this devotee, I think it was the GBC college. He sent some devotees to the GBC college of leadership. So none of these devotees were going to be leaders. So like, why did you send these devotees to the leadership conference? And so the devotees came back and said, now I know why you sent me there, because now I understand how hard it is to be a leader by going to this. He said, I'll never criticize him again. They said, this totally transformed me. I'm never going to give him a hard time, because now I finally realized by going to this training how hard it is to be a leader. So I think that's important. And then you become better by doing it sometimes. But at the same time, your concerns are valid. So there's got to be a balance. How can we help the leaders? How can we correct the leaders? So if you have a leader like this, don't tell me anything. If you do, I kick you out of the temple. Yeah, that's not going to work. And if we have devotees, I'm going to kick you out of the temple if you don't shape up, speaking to the leader, that's not going to work either, right? So, the obvious problem we have is we don't have a lineup of leaders like waiting to take over temples. We have this big, management university. We put thousands of young, super intelligent men and women just dying, salivating. Give me a temple. I want to take a temple. Give me a zone. I'll take a zone, Just give me something. I want to manage it. We don't have, we mostly have sadhus who are like, leave me alone. I just want to read Prabhupada's books. Isn't it? That's the kind of people we attract, right? And then you get that sadhu to be temple president, and he's like, knock on his door, like, don't bother me, I'm studying. And he's always, he's like blissful brahmachari, and he's temple president. He's like totally depressed, just dealing with everybody's problems. And he was just happy distributing books. I was dealing with everybody's problems. They're complaining about everything. Every sadham is too spicy. Your sadham's not spicy enough. There's too much salt in the sadham. Why don't you put more salt in the, he's like, then you go in his office and he's about to jump out the window, So it's not an easy job. I heard something which was so, for me, gratifying about leadership. Would you like to hear it? And if you ever become a leader, then you can remember this. I don't know if I told you this. So there was a study. I don't know the study, how in depth it was, but basically the study was it was done by interviewing employees of corporations, asking them, what do you like in a leader? And the two most prominent things people like in a leader is compassion and humility. Isn't that interesting? Like, And compassion and humility are the basis of bhakti. That's what it's made of. You want to mix up a pot of bhakti? Well, 2 cups of compassion, 2 cups of humility, mix it up, throw in a little forgiveness, and you get bhakti. Ta-da, So those are the ingredients. Isn't that amazing? So I think maybe the point you're getting at, Krishna Karshini, is not that bad leaders or unqualified leaders are a problem only if they're not trainable or they're just not their nature. But if they're trainable, and that means they're humble and compassionate, and they can be compassionate with devotees, they can be humble enough to be trained, then we're okay. But a leader who's not trainable, that can be a problem, unless he's already a compassionate person. Everybody likes him. It's not, then you don't have to train him. If he's already good, he can be better, but he's good enough. So it is a fact. And Prabhupada said we should preach in universities. Students are intelligent. They will be the leaders, future leaders. Prabhupada said if we don't have future leaders, then we don't have a future of the movement. People often will ask, what do you think the future of ISKCON will be? And say, well, we need qualified leaders, without which we don't have a bright future. That's a fact, for sure. So if any of you ever want to be leaders or become leaders, remember humility and compassion, and be willing to be trained. I think also what Krishna Karshini is referring to, when you become a leader, then you're expected to exemplify more or less, at least a minimum standard of Krishna consciousness. 16 rounds, visibly, we want to see you chanting your rounds. Things like that. There in the temple, you're a good person, you have integrity, you're truthful, you're clean, so forth like that. So yeah, that's true. If we don't have acharyas at the head, we have a problem. We will have a problem, or we have a problem. Yeah. So if you become leader, you have to be acharya for sure. So I'm part of several initiatives that are looking at leadership training. Not standard leadership training, but leadership training more in terms of relationships, becoming more capable in dealing with other people, which as we know, dealing with other people is often extremely difficult because we're all individuals with very complicated minds and backgrounds, and it's not always easy dealing with all kinds of people in a patient, tolerant, and compassionate way. Right? At least I can speak for myself. Sometimes, we just want people to say yes. Can you do this? We just want them to say yes. But they say, well, I could do it if she wasn't here, but as long as she's here, I'm not going to do it because, when I look at her, it's just like, I get really agitated, it's like, we all wish it was just like, yeah, okay, I'll just do it, right? But it's not like that. So we want to help leaders understand how to deal with people better and understand what's going on in their minds that are making it difficult sometimes for them and to help them. So I'm working on some initiatives, actually 2.5. Well, actually 3. I'm involved in 3 initiatives right now. I don't know what's going to happen, but if what we're putting on paper happens, wow, you're going to have a better ISKCON when you're older. I don't know how long, I don't know if we can pull it off and how long it's going to take, but if we do, it's going to be good. And the best part of it, Krishna Karshini, is you'll get to complain about the leader in a formalized way. Not only you, all of you. You can complain all you want in a formalized way, which will not be taken as criticism, but just as genuine concern for the welfare of the movement. And in a way that will help the leader and help the temple. Wouldn't that be good? Good or great? Fantastic or fantastic? Yeah, so just so you know, before you give up hope, we're actually working on it. And also, Krishna Karshini and all of you, there is huge awareness of what you said now in our movement, that we really need to do something to remedy the situation. So we'll see what else is here. So I've got the verse for anyone who wants to copy it down and memorize it. It's like I said, if you don't know that verse, I'll never speak to you again. So better learn it quick, right? Before you speak to me, I'll go, verse. Yasudeve para bhakti yata devi tathaga. I said, here, let me hear the verse. And if I really don't like it, I'm going to say word meanings. I need to hear each word. Yata devi, what is it? Just as. Yasya, of one who. Devi, God. Tata, just as. Guru, guru. Yasya, Devi, like. Tata, guru. Yeah. Yasya, Devi. Para bhakti. Yeah. All right, you have to learn. Yeah, you should learn the. If you're going to learn a verse, learn the word meanings, because a lot of times when you forget the verse, you remember the word meanings, and then you can put the verse back together. It's actually very illuminating. Okay. So another question from Krishna Karshini. From time to time, I can hear the devotees are saying that leaders in ISKCON saying that we cannot criticize those who are making mistakes, especially Prabhupada's disciples, saying that it is Vaishnav aparad. Might be, and it may not be. Because many of them made serious mistakes and they still want to be considered leaders or gurus. Guru Maharaj, how would you answer for this argument? It seems we cannot be blind if a guru or leader is making a mistake and pointing out this mistake cannot be considered Vaishnava. Well, here's the problem. Since we know everything on Facebook is true, you're just repeating what you read on Facebook as absolute truth, which it may not be, right? So that's the problem. This leader, blah, blah, blah. Well, how do you know? You ever met him? No. Well, how do you know? Well, I read it on Facebook. So that's problem number one. Not everything you read on Facebook is actually newsworthy to print. Well, it's not actually true worthy. That's one of the problems we have with social media. It's all not true. Now, there is a current issue in front of the eyes of ISKCON about a leader who some people say should step down and some people say should not because he's a sadhu. Why should a sadhu have to step down? Say, well, once upon a time he did something. And right, yeah. So here's the problem, or one of the problems, is like, how much do we know about everything in that case? Like, do we know all the details? Do we know what happened? Have you spoken to that person? Have you spoken to the person who was, quote unquote, the victim? And, it's like, we don't know all these things. And we're all like everybody's, well, in my opinion, blah, 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 so everybody has to give their opinion. And, I'm not saying your opinion is not valuable, but like, how much of the facts do you actually know? Well, I heard it on that show from that, whatever his name is, Hanuman guy in Croatia. Do you know him? Tanya Hanuman? He makes videos critiquing this kind of, well, I heard it from Hanuman. Well, I can tell you for a fact, Hanuman says things about me. Sometimes someone's calling you and you're like, they're going, hey, beautiful. And you're like, you're not calling me, are you? Yeah, and you're looking around, who are they calling, right? So he's a bit like that. He calls people out on things that they didn't do, which is another, which we were saying is blasphemy. So it depends where you're getting your news from and who you're hearing from, and if it's coming from the Ritviks, they make up stuff. That's their strategy. Just make it up, right? You can go online and Google my name, Mahatma, and you will come Mahatma Das Exposed. I'm like, what did I do? Like, okay, this is it, the end of my career. And I found out I was exposed because in my wife's Facebook picture, she's not covering her head with a sari. So I go, well, if that's the worst thing I've done, I'm doing pretty good. That's all I can say. If that's all you can get me on, so like any reasonable person will understand that. But, if you don't want to be reasonable, it's like, I know he was bogus. Who knows what they're doing in their house. He was on my case during that time. You remember in India when I had that court case against me? Cost us about $12,000 to get through that. And my family was in total anxiety. Like, you have no idea. Because they didn't know if they were ever going to see me again because they were leaving India and I couldn't get out of India until that case was settled. And that case wasn't going to be settled for at least 7 years. And so my wife was totally in anxiety. And our friend Hanuman was like, he just wants money. He's all about money. Yeah. It's like, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, we're in anxiety. I'm going to end up in prison because of this stupid court case and, end up in India the rest of my life. And he just wants money, just another guru wants money. So it's like, so if that's where you get your news, then, you're really qualified to make decisions about leaders. So that's part of the problem. In this specific case, which maybe you're referring to now, because when this issue comes up about criticizing leaders, usually this case comes up. And I don't really like talking about it because I just don't think we need to think about it so much. But it's being investigated by the GBC, and they will get information you're not privy to that you would never know about. And they don't necessarily have to tell you, but they will. So it's not like our movement. It's just interesting because it's not like our movement's not aware of these things and not doing anything. It's like if our movement wasn't doing anything, you're like, yeah, let's go out in the street, do something. You could do that, in a, Vaishnav, polite, humble. Could you do something, please? I think it's an issue, Child abuse is a big thing. We have to take more stands against it. Okay, we're all for that. There's no question. But when they're actually doing it and we're all making a big stink, it's kind of like, what do you do? Get a life, what are you doing, isn't it? It's like, why are you spending so much energy on that? Don't you have anything better to do? Like, hey, have you heard of this book? It's a really good book. You should read it. It's called Srimad Bhagavatam. Have you heard of it? Yeah. Maybe you should read that instead of like being on Facebook, talking about all that. The movement's finished and our leaders, it's not like that. Do you know, I don't know if you know this, do you know that amongst all the religious movements in the world, ISKCON is rated #1 in terms of what they're doing to how should I say, what they've done to take responsibility for past child abuse and prevent it? Even the Catholic Church said to ISKCON, you are doing better than us. What can we learn from you? Do you know that? I don't know if you all know that. If you did, maybe, not you, but if we did, maybe our attitude would be a little different. Yeah, okay, we can't let child abuse go. That's not an excuse. But I mean, this issue came up. It was talked about. It went back to GBC. They listened to it. They did something. They didn't avoid it. They're actually they're investigating it. 3 former members of the Child Protection Agency are investigating the case, along with GBC and members of India, because the members of India feel like the attitude of GBC is not really good in regards to this case. So they have a balanced group. They're actually doing something. So I don't know if you've ever been a leader, but do you know when you're a leader and you're actually doing something to remedy a situation and everybody's criticizing you that you're not? It's really difficult. Or you're getting accused for doing something you didn't do. It's like sometimes you feel like, okay, that's it. I'm building a cave underground and no one's going to find me. And I'm just going to chant all day there. I don't want to see anybody. That's what you feel like when you're a leader. So, I think we need to be more aware of what's going on. Now, if a leader isn't blatant, he's abusing someone in blatant denial, okay, we should do something in a Krishna conscious way. And there are avenues in our movement for that. GBC, There is Child Protection Agency. There's the Agency for Leadership Misconduct. There's all these things that you can do. And if you're not aware and you want to, then you can write me and I can tell you. I am going to do a little course, or I'm going to come up with a document on leadership. So Srijan, you will get something. And I think eventually I want to do a video on not all aspects of leadership, but aspects which I think are important for relationships. Okay. Führer. That means leader. You're my Führer. Or something like that. We need a German. Wait, Alina, tell us how she can tell us. Alina, you've been quiet. Tell us how to pronounce that. Did she disappear? Yeah. Alina.
Yes, it's Führer.
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 Yeah. Yeah. I can't say that. Say it one more time. Let me see how good my